Hello everyone, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. You may notice my voice is a bit off today. It's because I feel like I'm coming down with something. I haven't had much sleep for a while, so my voice may sound a little bit off. But yeah, in this one, we're going to be talking about some things that if you say them, it will most likely make a narcissist lose their minds. It will make them go insane if you say this. And I've got a number of things that if you do say them to the narcissist, yes, it will make them go crazy. This is why, I put it in the title, use with caution. Because you know what it's like when you're dealing with a narcissist. They can be very unpredictable. You never know how they might react. You never know what they might do to you. Because at times, yes, they can be out of control. They can be like loose cannons. They can be very unpredictable. And this is why, we've got to be aware and we've got to use this information with caution. And really, before I get into it, I would like to advise that this information really is just for educational purposes only. I don't actually advise you going out there and saying these things directly to a narcissist. Of course, that's up to you, whether you choose to or not. But you're all grown adults. And if you want to test it out, if you feel like it could be relatively safe using it with your narcissist, then by all means, give it a go. I can't tell any of you what to do. But for me, putting this out there, it's really for educational purposes only. And yeah, it's just to educate you, make you aware, and show you, they do have certain triggers, certain vulnerabilities. It's to show you how their mind works, what's really going on in their minds, what they're really thinking, what the process is. So it's designed to reveal all of this to you. And so, yeah, let's get into the first one. And give it a thumbs up as well. Let's work together, get this video out there. So the first one, if you really want to trigger a narcissist, if you really want to wind them up, make them lose their minds, all you got to say is these 4 words. It's the first one. I don't need you. It will destroy them. And you may be thinking, why would they even care? Do they even want to be needed? Because they're not anything that I need, is what you may be thinking. Because of course, it's like all they ever do is devalue you, abuse you. But that translates to them that you do need them and that you are dependent on them in their warped, delusional minds. Because they're keeping you under control, they're targeting your confidence, they're making you feel insecure, they're sabotaging everything you got going on in your life, turning people against you, isolating you, so that they're the only one left, the only option for you. And you can't even rely on yourself. You can't trust yourself anymore. So it's telling them in their minds that now, yes, you need them. Now they're very important, they're very significant to you. Even though it would seem like it's the opposite with all of the problems, all of the chaos, or the destruction that they're causing in your life. But to them, no, they take it as though they're needed now, they're desirable. That's how they're seeing it, because you've got nowhere else to go. No one else who you can depend on. And they're the only ones who are there, even if all they're giving you is abuse and expecting you to see it as a privilege to be around them. Just hiding these trolls with their distracting comments. But yeah, to summarize it, when you tell a narcissist, I don't need you, it strips their illusion of control and supply. Because it's the whole point with them is that they need to feel needed. They need to feel like you want them, so that they can get the validation, control, a sense of superiority. Now here's another one. That's not my problem. Now, why does this trigger a narcissist? It's because they want everything to be your problem. Of course, they're not completely stupid. They know that, they are a nuisance, they are a problem, they are a menace, they do just cause a lot of issues, chaos, disruption. Of course, they do know that. And that's why they're all over you, making it out like you are always the problem. And they just assume that in their minds, they just assign the role to you. And then it's all just about constantly just put it in front of you, just reflecting it to you. Yes, it's you. You're the problem. You're the issue. You make everything wrong. So that they can take the focus off of themselves, get you to agree with it, and then they don't have to identify with that. And really, whenever they're around you, whenever they see you, this is what they're thinking in their minds. They're just villainizing you, demonizing you. Even though you've done nothing wrong and you did everything you could to make things better for them. You sacrificed everything for the narcissist. No, they're villainizing you. They're blaming you for everything. And they may have told you this verbally. You may have seen them punishing you despite everything you've done for them. Because they want to remain unconscious, unaware of themselves. And that's how they put all of this onto you. And so, once you spend enough time around them, it's all just an endless blame shift. Playing the victim, it's all they ever do. Once you've gotten involved with them, once you've done a certain amount of things for them, you've helped them, you've been there for them, and they haven't done nothing for you other than just give you problems. But after that point, they just play the victim and they blame you for everything. And this is why, when you say to them, that's not my problem, it blocks their blame shifting. And it forces them to take accountability. And that's no good for them. It's no good for a narcissist. When you're trying to handle the accountability, which is rightfully theirs, it does belong to them, of course, with all of the things that they've done. It is their accountability, not yours. The problem is they don't know how to deal with it. They haven't got the means, the resources, the tools, nothing. They haven't got anything. They're not about anything. It's all a lie. They lied to you. They manipulated you. Future faked. So it's no good, Them taking the accountability. What are they supposed to do about it? They haven't got the power to change or improve anything. They can't even improve themselves. They can't even take care of their own lives. Forget about another person. And this is why, they get so angry. They become even more manipulative. They just get even worse if you go to them and you try and get them to take accountability. Any of you who have confronted a narcissist, you know what it's like. They go crazy. They get really mad. They rage. Why do they rage? Because they know there's nothing they can do about it. They know they're completely weak, powerless, helpless little children. There's nothing they can do. And not only that, but deep down, it's like you're just telling them what they already know. Is what, they're worthless, they're useless, inadequate. They already know that. That's why they wore a mask. That's why they manipulated, deceived you. That was the whole point of it all. And this is why, if there's one thing that they really despise, it's accountability. It's when you block their blame shifting. When you don't fall for their victim playing, they can't stand it. So yeah, when you say, that's not my problem, when you don't take it on, when you don't identify with it, ooh, they can't stand that. Give it a thumbs up if this has resonated with you so far. I've got many more to come. All right, here's another one for you. I'm done explaining myself. Why does this bother them so much? When you say I'm done explaining myself, it's because, this character that they're displaying to you, this person who's meant to be completely immune to any sort of blame, shame, it's like they're just above it all. They're unaffected. Really, no. The reason why they come at it like that is because it's actually the opposite. They're more insecure, more fragile than anyone. And this is why they can't stand it when you say you're done explaining yourself, because they need it to go on and on to no end, because they're that insecure. They're that much full of shame. They're that much trying to run away from it and escape reality, the reality of their actions and behavior, to the point where they need endless validation from you, endless approval, endless taking on the blame, all of the accountability, and accepting none of it for themselves. This is why they need you to endlessly explain yourself, defend yourself, because they're that insecure. This is why they need it to go on and on. And this is why, as you may notice, they don't want a sense of resolution. They don't want any resolve. They're not looking for answers, closure. They don't want it to end. They want to keep it open. And they don't want a sense of understanding. They don't want you to understand anything. They want to keep you in a state of confusion, of the narcissistic fog. No resolve. All you get from them is circular conversations, word salad. Because, like I said, they're so full of shame and they're trying to run away from it, to the point where they just have to keep you explaining yourself to them. You feel like there's something wrong with you, not because of anything that you've even done, but because of the horrific things that they have done to you. And they want you to explain, you to justify, rationalize all of that. So yeah, this is why they can't stand it, when you tell them you're done explaining yourself. They need you to keep explaining, keep defending, just keep the focus on you and how you have to prove something to them, not the other way around, because they're so full of shame as a result of the things that they have done. They're trying to run away from it. And They just can't deal with the blame, the accountability. They don't know what could they possibly do about it, because they were never on your level to begin with. And, just with what they've been messing with you, the level that you are on or were on, mentally, emotionally, financially, it's essentially like, some of the places I've been to, some of like the manor houses and the palaces that I visited, the royal yachts, everything in England. It's kind of like the narcissist went there. I like knocked something over, like a vase or something. Of course, they're not going to take any accountability. Of course, they're not going to accept the blame because they can't afford it. And not because of anything that you've done to them. But like I said, these people, they just can't even take care of themselves. Especially not to the degree that you can with yourself. That's why they wanted to be in association with you, to try and get you to take care of them, because they can see how things are with you. They can see you're looking good, you're feeling good. You got your swagger, you got your confidence, your mental and emotional health, your stability, your finances, that's all in check. They can see that, and they recognize how it's not like that for them. That's how they try and turn you into their parent, their caretaker. It's like they become your child. They start throwing these tantrums. That's how it ends up like that. Here's another one for you, one that I have mentioned quite a few times before. And, definitely is true. This is one, it's a big one, if you say this to a narcissist, they will go crazy, especially after they've groomed you. If it's in the love bombing phase, you can get away with it. It's not going to bother them. They will still likely continue idealizing you. But especially, once you get to the devaluation phase, if you say this one, if you say to a narcissist, no, they're going to lose their minds. Because they've already assigned you to this position of being their caretaker, of just doing whatever they want, whatever they need it, jumping, saying how high, wherever they tell you to jump. They've already assigned you to that position. So of course, at that point, if you say no, it really frustrates them. It really gets under their skin. They don't know how to deal with it. And they will just likely rage. Or in some cases, if they haven't really got the confidence behind it, they will sulk. They will become passive aggressive. Typically the overt narcissists who, they really feel like they deserve something. They really got their entitlement, superiority. They will come out and rage directly. And they will start making demands. But it's not always based on truth, A lot of times this is delusion, even with the overt narcissists. Here's another one for you. I trust my instincts. Just dictating yourself, governing yourself, affirming to yourself and to them that you trust your instincts. You trust what you feel, what you believe to be true, what is instinctual, intuitive to you, your gut instinct. They do not want you to trust your gut instinct. They want you to trust in them, have faith in them as though they are your God. Because remember, they're constantly manipulating you, gaslighting you. And what really destroys all of that is when you attune to yourself, when you trust your own worth, your own confidence, your own ideas, opinions, perceptions. It just blocks out all of that. And then they don't know what to do. They sense that they are losing control over their puppets. They're no longer able to pull the strings on you. And of course, that then threatens their supply, the validation, the sense of superiority that they need. And they then begin to feel inferior, inadequate, helpless, powerless. Again, you've got to be very careful, because this is when they often go to playing the victim, smearing you. When you start trusting your instincts again, and here's another one. This is really a good test, to know that you are dealing with someone who is highly narcissistic. If you say to them, you're not as important as you think, and especially, when they are acting out their grandiose role, boasting about something, and you just say to them, you're not as important as you think, really just crushes their delusions. Because think about it, it's not really a form of vulnerability, but it's a form of expression, okay? That they're putting something out there that they're not truly confident about or secure about from within. And that is actually when they're most vulnerable. They want you to think that that's when they're most powerful. It's when they feel the most powerful. But that power is coming from you. So it's actually when they are most vulnerable. Because at any moment, you can decide to withdraw that power and energy, take it back within. So yeah, when they're bragging and boasting about anything, when they're in that role of grandeur, and even when they're abusing you, all of this is their self-expression. And all of these times are when they are most vulnerable, not most powerful. You are given the power to them. You are the one with the power there, not them. You can take that power back. And, you may think, if they're abusing me, if they're harming me, how have I got any power there? Well, the power is all in your reaction. So when they're harming you, it's not really the harm that they're doing to you. That's not really what's making them feel powerful. It's getting you in agreement. Like you have to agree, yes, they've done you in. They've hurt you this time. You have to react to the bruises that they've caused. That's what makes them feel powerful. And so you can withdraw it at any time. Of course, my advice is you want to keep them feeling powerful while you're with them. While you're in the relationship, you want them to be getting that supply. If it's not from you, then from somewhere else. Let them stay in their delusions. You'll experience less trouble that way. Typically, you will. Because of course, if they have harmed you and you're still not giving them the reaction, they're not going to be satisfied. That means they're going to want more. They're going to ramp it up, possibly. They're either going to ramp it up or, even when they do ramp it up, they're really on the verge of backing down and leaving, running off. That's why they're ramping it up. They're just trying to hurry up and get something out of you because they know, that they're losing influence. They haven't got much more behind it. They don't just keep going on forever. But yeah, they want to feel important. They want to be something important to you. So of course, when you tell them you're not as important as you think, it crushes that fragile ego and their grandiosity. And it shrinks them back down, it deflates them to their true size. Because of course, they like to inflate themselves so that they can feel bigger than they really are. But again, the only reason that they're so big, the only reason they're so hard is because of you. You take that stimulus away and they shrink back down to their true size. Remember that. It's only because of the feedback, the stimulus coming from you. You inflate them. You make them big. And don't forget it. So anytime that they brag or boast about it, remember, that's your power. You are the one that fuels that. And, as an example, that's why I don't go bragging and boasting so much about my accomplishments, because it's not just my accomplishments, such as my YouTube plaque and all of the subscribers, the views, and all of the places that I've traveled, because that's not just all about me. And it rarely ever is all about one person's personal success. No. Why not give people credit instead of making it all about you? That's how I see it. And I always remember, everyone that I learned from back in the day, everyone who inspired me, Quinn Holiday, Michelle Neves, the Royal We, even Kevin Sullivan, so many YouTubers, and all of you, my viewers, my subscribers, people who booked coaching with me, donated. You all made me. And, of course, this work without the viewers, without people who actually watch the videos, it doesn't really mean anything other than just to me. And this is it. This is a big part of it, with their grandiosity, is making it all about themselves. And it's a big problem with narcissists, they make it about how they're so wonderful. What about everyone else? What about everyone who got you to where you are? And, of course, fair enough, if you're a victim and, if you were abused as a child and you didn't receive much support, then maybe you haven't got many people to thank. And of course, many of you, about my childhood, about all of the adversity that I faced. But despite that, I never forget the people who have helped me, the people who made me and, gave me such a variety of experiences that I otherwise never would have experienced. And, like I said before, if it wasn't for my subscribers, everyone who supported me, I'd probably still be stuck in that same apartment in Britain to this day. I was already there for about 2.5 years before I began the channel. All I was doing every day is just walking back and forth, buying some food wherever I could afford. I was just receiving government payments, £300 a month. Of course, much of that went to my gym membership. I went to Nala. Of course, I don't mind paying every month food for Nala. That's not a problem to me at all. But yeah, times were hard back then. Nothing really to look forward to, just fantasies, and the fantasies got me through. But yeah, I always give thanks to my viewers and subscribers, because without you, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And I've always said that. But you see many narcissists these days, whether they're CEOs, whatever position they may be in, it's just all about themselves, how wonderful they are. What about their viewers? Even people on social media. What about your followers? What about the people who like your pictures or videos? They never give any consideration to them. It's just all about how wonderful they are. Blue Indigo Trails, thank you for the donation. He or she says, in other words, you ain't SHIT. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You just tell the narcissist that they ain't anything. They don't know how to deal with that. And, this is it, It's just that need that they have to be something. But of course, maybe we are really something grand spiritually. It may be a possibility. But why is it such a need? Why must you have to be something? Why can't you accept being nothing? In the grand scheme of things, in this universe. And, I think that can be an important perspective too. And also, a lot of times we are nothing. In certain fields, in certain interests, when we start at the beginning. But they've always got to skip that part. They've got to be something straight away. They've got to be everything. They've got to be the best, even if they've never done any work. And that is highly narcissistic when someone does that. When they haven't actually done anything, and already they just think that, they're really something. It's like, why didn't you actually do something first? Perform? And then we can celebrate and, talk about how wonderful you are. But no, they just want to have that first. And it doesn't really make any sense. You've got to work your way up to it. And, it's how it was with me. Earlier along my journey, when I first started making videos, I was very quiet, very humble about it. And of course, now I've become more confident. I'm more sure about my views and the things that I've experienced and researched. And that's natural, that comes with time. And also the same thing, going back to Nala. When I first had Nala, I was actually very insecure. When I first had her, I remember she was constantly hiding under the couch. She wouldn't eat her food. And then I remember her just standing by the balcony door, the glass door, and she was looking outside and crying. And I was so sad. I was just thinking, I felt lonely, so lonely at that time. I didn't really have anyone. I didn't really have much support. And I thought, this cat is going to keep me company, hopefully. And yeah, she was looking outside the balcony door, and I just felt completely worthless. I just felt like I'm just completely unwanted. And yeah, now since then, my confidence with Nala has grown. And now, I can sit here and say that I've taken very good care of her over the past 8 years. I've given her a life that very few cats in this entire world will have. Taken her to many different countries, many different climates. She's seen so many different kinds of animals around the world. She's been in so many different cars, hotels, everything. And, I did a lot of research, making sure that she has the best food, like what's right for her. And that's why, even to this day, she's 8 years old, still very healthy, strong. And, she's going to have a long, healthy life. So, my confidence built up over time with Nala, with my YouTube, as it should. And yeah, once you've been through the process, you've done the work, you should be feeling confident at that point. You shouldn't be feeling unsure. I mean, it's kind of like, if you go to a doctor and they've been a doctor for 20, 30 years, you would want them to know what they're doing. You would want them to be really sure about it. I mean, of course, if they're lacking confidence, you're going to be worried about it. Something is seriously wrong. And especially in sales, business, of course, they come across as very arrogant, and yeah, maybe they should. That's how you get a sale. You want to show how great you are. And especially since it's very competitive. But that's the thing, with a narcissist, is that they actually haven't got really any value in what they profess that they do. And yet they're so arrogant. So that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it's narcissistic. But if you've actually done the work, if you are actually something important, then yeah, you probably should be highly confident about it. If you've got the skills, the qualities, you've done something so many times, you've done the research, you've got the experience. But yeah, you say that to a narcissist, it will really bother them. And they're not going to reflect. They're not going to think, maybe you could be right. Let me hear you out. Why am I not as important as I think? They're not going to think that way. They're going to take it as an attack. And then they're going to make it as though it's you who's not important. That's typically what they will do. They will deflect. Here's another one. I'm not afraid of losing you. Because again, they want you to be dependent on them. They want you to feel like you need them. And, they always toy with you. They play these games to where you feel like you're losing them. And then you chase after them. You're trying to hold on to them. And they try and get you to kind of come out of character, doing things you wouldn't normally do, overextending yourself into other areas, doing things that you shouldn't be doing to try and please them. And this happens because you may have felt afraid of losing them. And another one is, I don't care what you think. It destroys their power to influence your self-worth, because they want everything how you define yourself to revolve around them. They want to have the power to define you. And this is absolutely nonsense. It's kind of like you going out into the wild and you trying to define just something like a tree, an animal, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, you can try and define it. We as humans, we try to define things. But just because we say that it's something, it doesn't mean that it is. And it's the same thing with a narcissist. I mean, we define ourselves. We define who we are. And especially with us, because we're real, we're authentic, we're genuine. They know we are. That's why they targeted us. That's where they get our power from. If anyone shouldn't be defining themselves, it's them, because they are fake, they are corrupt. So it should be the other way around, if anything. Because, just think about it logically. It's like they want to be defined as a nice, good person who's helpful and considerate. Think about it. Are they any of those things? Have they demonstrated any of those qualities to you consistently over a period of time? No. So, they can define themselves that way. Just don't push it onto us. We don't have to believe in it, because we've seen things that contradict that. But as for us, I mean, they're trying to define us a certain way. Meanwhile, they're exploiting the very qualities that they are simultaneously invalidating in us. Gaslighting. This is why you never let them define you. And this is why, when you tell them, I don't care what you think, they lose their minds. They feel that their control is slipping away, because they control you by getting you to agree with their definition of you. That's how they keep you in the box. But when you start defining yourself, suddenly you can grow. You're no longer trapped in their maze. Here's another thing you can say to make a narcissist lose their minds. That sounds like a you problem, because they're always blame shifting, projecting, deflecting, and they're always trying to personalize things with you, making it about how it's just something that's a part of you, it's assigned to you, and they disidentify from it. You could just turn it back around to them and say, no, actually, I think that sounds like a you problem. This is something that is associated with you, not with me. It's a part of your identity, not mine. And of course, that's going to make them lose their minds, because deep down they know that already, and they're trying to rid themselves of it. So the last thing they want is for that very thing that they're trying to rid themselves of to come right back at them. Return to sender. So of course, yes, that will make them lose their minds. And another one, I don't accept your version of reality. Because of course, that's what they want you to do. They want you to see their version of reality as the only one that's valid, the only one that's true, even the only one that exists. And they just expect you to accept it blindly, as though it's the only option. or the only thing that's right. But yeah, when you unplug from their false narrative, from their control, then they really start to lose it. That's when some of them will rage, some of them will disappear, find a new source, but it destabilizes them. It takes away their platform, their stage, to where they were once getting the validation from you, from getting you to believe in their lies. But yeah, these are just a few things, that if you say them, many narcissists will lose their minds, especially the lesser narcissists who aren't so aware of themselves. They're going to snap very quickly. The ones who are more aware and have been doing this for a long time, they may already be ahead of it. And they may be ahead of why you may be saying those things and of how you're trying to get back the control. And it may make them feel even more important, even more in control. And if they're not so self-aware, you may see the narcissistic smirk. But if they've already been through it so many times, they will keep that to themselves. And they won't reveal it to you. Because they may want you to keep on going. Keep on saying these things to them. Keep giving them supply. Because they're still getting supply out of it. And that's really it, A narcissist is either getting supply or they're losing their minds. It's typically going to be one of the two. And so if they're not losing their minds and they're still there, and especially if you believe you're dealing with an aware narcissist who understands things more, they may be keeping that smirk to themselves on the inside. Because they're aware that, it's like you've got the games that are being played, the things that are being said, and they're aware of it. They've heard it all before, they've seen it all before. They already know why you're saying what you're saying, why you're doing what you're doing. They can already recognize that the ball is in their court, that they've already got the power from you, and now you're trying to get it back. So there's always levels, there's layers to it. And there's different degrees of narcissism. And this is how it can get to a point, where you're dealing with some narcissists. It's almost like they're like masochistic. It's like they enjoy the pain, the harm. They like it when you lash out at them, get mad. Even when you actually cause harm to them, if they can get you to that point, because it tells them they're still important, they're still relevant, enough to get you to do that. And yeah, it can go pretty deep sometimes into the realms of these very experienced narcissists. And it can get to a point where it is difficult to tell, especially from the outside. But yeah, typically it doesn't take much to make a narcissist lose their minds anyway, but definitely these things, you say them, they will explode. I recommend using it with caution. Because of course, I don't want to put any of you into harm's way. And that's why, as always, I say this is for educational purposes only. And it is your own personal decision if you do choose to say these things to a narcissist. Thank you for the donation, Spooderface891. He or she asks about thoughts on O.J. Simpson. I can't give my thoughts on that because I don't really know too much about it. But of course, I have some background knowledge about it. But it's not something that I can really give my views on. Could it be relevant to this? Maybe. Maybe it could be. God, there's so many trolls just like trying to throw a line. Trying to hook something in. I can tell they're drowning. It's pretty sad, when you think about it. It's like they can't get any supply in the real world. They got to get online. Even online, they can't find it anywhere. Oh, they got to go to the Narc Survivor channel. It's like the last place, probably the last place that any troll wants to go. Like, what narcissistic person wants to go to the Narc Survivor channel to get supply? And that's why, I just try not to laugh at them because it's pretty pathetic when you think about it. Like, of all places, a narcissistic troll has to go to the Narc Survivor channel because they can't get it anywhere outside in the world, nowhere else online. That's pretty sad. Like, that's how you know, when a narcissist is really desperate, they may even entertain trying to go back to someone who already knows who they are, already knows what they're dealing with, already knows that they're a narcissist. And think about it, why would they settle for that? Why would they settle for returning to a survivor? Someone who's already seen their game already. It's only because they can't find anyone who's innocent and unaware. Someone who is foolish. It's because there isn't anyone. So they're really in a place of desperation where they're willing to go to a survivor, someone who's already seen their act before. So yeah, I really pity these people, But I've been saying this for a while, especially in the age of social media. There isn't so much supply out there anymore. People are waking up. It's not the same as it used to be, where you could just pull the wool over someone's eyes. That's very rare. God, it's getting pretty bad in these comments there. It's really bad when they start engaging in like sexual harassment, sexual innuendos. And it's I'm all for having a laugh sometimes, nothing wrong with that, make it a joke. But when you're having like a serious discussion about something, and then suddenly they pop up with like sexual references, making sexual advances, it's just like, that's so they're really desperate for supply. They're really desperate for something. They want to feel like they're involved in some kind of sexual discussion, or trying to sexually offend you so that they feel like they have some kind of power over you. It's sexual insecurity. If they were actually secure in their sexuality, then they wouldn't be that way. I mean, there's definitely different degrees, of narcissist trolls. And sexual exploitation, sexual predators, they're definitely at the tip top of the mountain there. I mean, that is really messed up, when they start bringing in these sexual references and they're sexually provocative in an unwanted way, or where they don't even have the awareness that it's unwanted. Or, on the other end, when they bait you into something and then they switch it up on you, and then they make it out like you're the predator, you're the pervert. That's just as bad. But yeah, either way, whichever way they go, these are some real creeps. But speaking of that, I have been thinking for a while, because, that's a large part of my experience, is that I have experienced sexual abuse on so many occasions throughout my life. And, I'm talking about, I don't even know, like 100 times, couple of 100 times in my life. So, with all of the other videos I've done, I probably should be doing a video on that as well. How they get into these things, and, when they start becoming like sexually exploitative, or withholding sex is another one in a relationship. Baiting you into something. Just all kinds of things like that. And when it's not even with consent, who knows, we'll see if there's a demand for that kind of thing. But typically there isn't, not at the moment, even though there's definitely a lot of victims out there who are going through it. I know that. There just doesn't seem like there's much discussion about it on YouTube. But the more extreme things, and that's why I kind of stayed out of that. But yeah, if there's one thing I can't stand, is people with no boundaries. These hillbilly, redneck type of people. It just disgusts me. There's nothing I like more, than people having their own boundaries. Having that separation. And for me, I was always at a type where it's like, if I ever get married, I want to have separate bedrooms. Not that we don't sleep together, but just because I like my own personal space. And I also deeply appreciate and respect, a woman's femininity. And, I want it to be like a gift, an experience for me. If I get married and we have separate bedrooms, and then I go into her room, and it's like a different experience for me compared to if we share a bedroom. That's like my manly space, and then she's got her own, where she has all of her feminine things. Because I like that, but yeah, the world seems to be going the other way. Now we have a lot of women out there who may be more masculine, men who may be more feminine. And yeah, the lines get blurred. This is the issue, the lack of boundaries. But for me, I always admired that. And I always respected it. Of course, that's a big part about all of this. With a narcissist, there is that lack of boundaries. Thank you for the donation, Blue Indigo Trails. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's all about that lack of boundaries, No appreciation for you, no respect. That's a good one, yeah. Lorraine Diane. She says it's like going for a steak at a vegan shop. Yeah, it's really weird. But it's because of, they have like a dopamine addiction. And they want to like assert their power and authority. So they're the types of people who, rather than going to a steakhouse for a steak, which, that's where you would typically go, they're the types of people who will go to a vegan restaurant and complain and really be an ass about it and be like, why haven't you got any meat? Why can't you cook me a steak? That's typically what they're like. And the only reason they're not out there doing that is because there's laws and because they could get in trouble, and they know that. But this is pretty much what they do with all of us, They can see that, we are certain types of people. We want certain things, and they try and appeal to us, knowing that they're the opposite. And then they really get a kick, a sense of power from trying to shift us into something else. And that's what gives them that dopamine hit, that adrenaline rush, is when they can change us. And that's really sick. That's how you know that someone did not have boundaries as a child. That's how you know that someone exploited someone else's boundaries. Something seriously went wrong for them when they're like that. Because I know myself, as someone who had firm, rigid boundaries as a child. Other people didn't respect them. I held on to them no matter what. And for me, it's always been about protecting and preserving who a person is. And actually what made me uncomfortable in my past is when I saw exes randomly just kind of change out of their identity, out of who they were before. And then they became something completely different from who I thought they were. And as an example, I think I spoke about this before. But my narcissistic ex, who I dated and broke up with, just before making these videos, she was a Muslim and she wore a hijab. And she was once very humble and modest. And then all of a sudden, she stopped wearing her hijab and started going to bars and being with these other guys. And I was very confused about it. I couldn't understand. Because I was all about protecting and preserving who she is. And then all of a sudden she changed. And, this isn't about growth. But yeah, that really bothered me. And funny enough, I saw that with a few narcissists. They just suddenly switched it up on me. Because they're willing to destroy themselves or who they pretend to be to get to you. It's like they may act like they're a healthy person who doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. And because they know, that's going to trigger you, that's going to upset you, that's going to confuse you, then they'll go out and do all of those things. It's all a lack of boundaries, a lack of identity, stable identity. They just shapeshift and become anything. But at this point, I've learned better now not to chase after people, not to try and remind them of who they are, who they were supposed to be. I'm done with all that. And, if someone wants to do that, if someone wants to switch up and become something completely different, then that's fine with me. I realize now I can't control people. But yeah, just a little story from the past to share with you. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts, on what I've been saying here. But the thing with the boundaries, because I've been talking about it for a little while. I'm going to get to the gym now, but definitely let me know in the comment section. I read your comments every day. And I'd like to hear from you, what do you think about what I've said to you? And what do you think about, me, like my views on this and, my personality, the way that I've always been and what I've had to experience? Is it something you can relate to? Because I think for many of you, you had rigid boundaries before, but because, you feel like it's love, it's connection, you're meant to let that go because, the boundaries can get in the way. That's the mistake that we can make sometimes. I mean, yeah, of course, when you love someone and you're in a relationship with a good, honest person, you want to let those boundaries go. You want to get closer together. But not with a narcissist. That's when they do the most harm. That's why we've got to grey rock these people. Be boring, uninteresting. Don't reveal too much personal information, anything about your life. They come in to steal, to harm you. Not to build you up, not to celebrate you, not to preserve and protect you. That's not what they're trying to do. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about what I've said to you. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new. And hit the bell icon so that you will be notified when I go live again. If you'd like to book a one-on-one coaching session, I am available for you. And you can book by going to my website. It's narcsurvivor.co.uk. Also, I appreciate your donations, no matter how small. Donate by going to paypal.me/narcsurvivor. You can also follow me on my Instagram. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. And we have a new Facebook group, new videos every day, and quizzes. The Facebook group is called Narc Survivor. And actually, no, I forgot. My Instagram isn't Narc Survivor YouTube anymore. I actually changed it the other day. Now it's narcsurvivor.co.uk. Same as the website. So you pretty much just type the website on the Instagram search, and then my page will come up. But yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you all for joining me. And as always, I look forward to speaking with you in another live video very soon.